You are live now.
Good morning, everyone. This meeting of the City of Annapolis Civil Service Board is called to order. The time is 9:04 a.m. For the record, I would like to note that my name is Roberto Veloso and I am the chair of the Civil Service Board. My fellow board members, Ms. Jennifer Beard and Mr. Sam Callahan, are on this Zoom meeting also. Accordingly, we have a quorum. Also here today is Ms. Demetria Creek from the city's Human Resources Department, who is serving in her capacity as liaison for the board, and Ms. Cheryl Wood, Esquire, who's serving as counsel to the board. Today, we are here for the hearing of Mr. Howard Johnson Jr.'s appeal of his termination by the City of Annapolis on September 15, 2020. The Civil Service Board hearing of Mr. Johnson's appeal is pursuant to the Civil Service Board's authority under Section 3.12.050D of the City of Annapolis Code. Will counsel for the parties please identify yourselves for the record?
Good morning, Mike Full on behalf of Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Berger, you're muted.
It would help if I unmuted myself. Good morning, Carrie Berger on behalf of the Department of Public Works.
Okay.
Okay. I want to also note for the record all of the other individuals that are on the call, and if you could please identify your role. We have a court reporter that is transcribing this meeting, and I want to make sure that we get all this information on the record correctly. I'm just going to go through the screen, and as I see individuals, I'm going to ask them to identify themselves. Mr. Mackel, could you please identify yourself?
Elvis Mackel, City of Annapolis Public Works Dispatch.
Mr. Howard Johnson.
Howard Johnson, equipment operator 1 recently.
Mr. Mike Johnson.
Good morning, Mike Johnson, the Director of Public Works, City of Annapolis.
Ms. Patricia Hopkins.
Patricia Hopkins, Human Resources Manager for the City of Annapolis.
Okay, I have somebody who's identified as Assistant Director. They have their video off. If you could just tell us who you are.
Hi, this is Marcia Patrick. I'm Assistant Director of Public Works.
Excellent. Mr. Horwath.
Daniel Harworth, City of Annapolis Public Works Fleet Manager.
Okay, Mr. Corbin. Can you hear us, Mr. Corbin?
David Corbin, Court Reporter.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Let me see here. I believe, is there anyone I didn't call on? Didn't identify? Okay. As a preliminary matter, let's go ahead and swear in all the witnesses. Ms. Creek, do you have the oath with you by any chance? I can get it for you if you don't have it.
I do.
Okay. All the witnesses, if you could please raise your right hand.
You didn't call Letitia Granger.
Is she on the call? I don't see her.
She was on there with Ellis Mackel.
Okay. Miss Letitia Granger?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Letitia Granger, Public Works Office Associates.
Okay. All right. Everyone who is going to be testifying, please raise your right hand and go ahead, Ms. Creek.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the responses given and statements made will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes,
I do.
I do.
I do.
All right. I am seeing somebody putting a note in the chat saying, can you identify yourselves, please? Who was that? You, Hillary?
Yes, I'm sorry. That wasn't for you. That was just for an individual coming in who I couldn't identify.
Okay. Has that individual identified themselves?
No, it just says RDC.
RDC.
That's probably Bob Kokenauer.
Okay. Mr. Kokenauer, is that you? Mr. Kokenauer? Okay. We have an individual identified as RDC. I'm not sure if they could hear us. If they end up testifying, we will go ahead and swear them in at that point in time.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Kokenauer.
Hello?
Mr. Kokenauer? Mr. Kokenauer, are you there? Okay, we're going to move on and we'll just swear Mr. Kokenauer in when and if we call him to testify.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So if everybody could mute themselves unless they're speaking, that would also help us get through the hearing here today.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound.
There we go. All right. Okay. Mr. Foley, Ms. Berger.
Can you hear me?
You have not entered any.
Mr. Kokenauer?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Hello? We could see you. All right. I am. Hillary, do you have Mr. Kokenauer's phone number?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Thank you. All right. Moving right along. Council, just to confirm, you would like to enforce the rule on witnesses. Is that correct?
I believe Mr. Foley wants to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's feasible.
Ladies and gentlemen that are testifying here today, and Mr. Foley, your first witness is going to be Mr. Johnson?
Correct.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen who are going to be testifying here today, we are going to enforce the rule on witnesses. That means that we do not want you to hear the testimony of other witnesses that are testifying before you have an opportunity to testify. Because of the Zoom technology, we're counting on you to do this on your honor. And when we, in a moment, I'm going to ask everyone to please log off the Zoom call and not to watch any of the testimony that is being broadcast live over the internet. When we are going to have you testify, either counsel for Mr. Johnson or for the city will give you a telephone call and ask you to log back in. Does everyone understand those instructions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So if all the witnesses except for you, Mr. Howard Johnson, if you could all just go ahead and log off the meeting and we will take it from there. Thank you.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're just waiting for Mr. Corbin. No, Mr. Corbin is a court reporter, correct? Apologize, I've gotten myself confused here. I believe it is a court reporter. Okay. Council, are there any preliminary matters that we need to discuss or take up? Are there any stipulations we can agree on with respect to the admissibility of any proposed exhibits? Anything we could do to try to make the hearing run a little bit smoother today?
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Veloso, I just want to make sure two preliminary things. One, that you got my revised exhibits with pages 82 and 83.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And if I recall correctly, you did a reply all, so all the members of the board and Ms. Berger should have a copy of that.
Okay, great. And so with that said, that I would move to ask that appellant's exhibits in its entirety, pages 1 through 83, be admitted into evidence as a preliminary matter.
I don't have any objection to that.
Okay, so moved. So appellant's exhibits number 1 through 12, pages 1 through 83 are admitted into evidence. Ms. Berger?
And I would do the same with the respondents exhibits, 1 through 25 being admitted into evidence in their entirety.
No objection.
With no objection, all of respondents' exhibits are also admitted. Exhibit number 1 through 25. And tell me the page numbers again, Ms. Berger. I just want to
I
make sure.
believe it's they're 58, 57, or 58 in total.
Okay. All right. With no objections, both appellants and respondents' exhibits have been admitted into evidence. And any other preliminary matters?
I have sort of a logistics question, because some of the exhibits contain not only just medical information, but also I think a couple of them have Mr. Howard Johnson's social security number on them. And I would imagine, since this is an open meeting, that we want to try to avoid broadcasting his social security number. Is there a way that the board wants us to handle those type of exhibits?
I think when we get to that portion of the hearing where you're going to be showing an exhibit to a witness, if I don't know if you have the capacity to focus in on just that portion of the exhibit that doesn't have the private identifiable information. I mean, because generally that private identifiable information, if I recall correctly from the medical record, is kind of at the top where they have the social security number. So if you could just focus on, let's make sure we know which document we're talking about, and focus on, if you can, when you do your share screen. Also, I'm not opposed to if you want to redact the private identifiable information that's on there. I certainly have no problem with that, and I don't know if Mr. Foley would have an objection with that. I would imagine he wouldn't.
No, of course. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Ms. Berger. I don't think I will be focusing on at least in my testimony, on main medical records, except for maybe one. I don't think I'm going to be going across any pages that include it, but I appreciate the heads up so I can be aware of that.
Okay.
All right, with no other preliminary matters, we're going to conduct this hearing typical fashion. Each counsel will have an opportunity to make a brief opening statement, then an opportunity to present evidence. Then after that, cross-examination. Then we'll have an opportunity for rebuttal evidence at the conclusion of the principal case of both appellant and respondent, and then some closing arguments. And I'm going to request, most likely request that findings of fact and conclusions of law be submitted, and then the board will issue a written decision thereafter. Any questions before we begin?
Just Ms. Filesso, in case I need to show an exhibit, the procedure would be
Yes.
share my screen.
Yep.
Just go to the page. Okay, great.
Yep. Ms. Raftovich, can you please enable screen sharing?
I have, thank you.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, with that, I believe we can go ahead and commence with opening arguments. Mr. Foley?
Okay, and thank you everyone for being here today and for taking the time to discuss Mr. Johnson's appeal. I'm going to leave most of my argument for closing, but just as a brief opening, I want to state that Mr. Johnson suffered numerous work injuries, which I don't believe is in any way really doubted, or the severity of his injuries. I think even a lot of medical records and doctors here in this case have put similar restrictions on Mr. Johnson even prior to his termination. So I don't really think the validity or exactly the extent of his restrictions or his limitations are that much in dispute. It seems like all the parties can, I think, will agree on that. Mr. Johnson was a very good employee who was meeting employer expectations. We contend that the county, or the city, the city did not comply with the rules and regulations of the city and or violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, which, if anything, the Americans with Disabilities Act allows greater protections, and the city cannot in any way go beneath that. They can offer lesser protections based on the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. So the ADA, as well as the City of Annapolis, its rules and regulations, we believe were violated here for numerous reasons, and I'm only going to hit on some of these now, and I'll have to wait for some testimony to flesh out some of the others. But we believe he could have continued working as an equipment operator one in a different, with some modification in position. We don't believe that there was any discussion or interactive discourse with Mr. Johnson to discuss how he can continue doing the job he was doing as equipment operator one with perhaps some modifications or job restructuring. Number two is we contend that he could have continued working with Dan Horvath in fleet maintenance. Number three is when he was later switched to an office position, which he was at that, in March 2020 terminated. We believe he could have stayed in that position. We essentially believe there was job availability in the city, yet he was terminated because of his medical conditions. And so we also believe there were some vacant positions he could have qualified for, or with some reasonable accommodation could have become qualified for prior to his termination, but yet Mr. Johnson was not afforded that opportunity, which again we contend is a violation of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the city's codes and the city regulations. And like I said, I'm going to put most of my argument towards closing, but that's just my brief opening for Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Ms. Berger?
Okay, good morning, everyone. As Mr. Foley stated, Mr. Johnson is an equipment operator one with the Department of Public Works, and he's had a series of medical issues over the last few years that's put him in mostly either a modified duty, sick leave, or short-term disability status. And the medical evidence is going to show that he has his own physicians that have recommended within the last few months either a medical retirement or at, I guess, the most a lifting and carrying restriction of 10 pounds. But the equipment operator one position is a position that requires a lot of heavy lifting, and it is a heavy laborer type of position. The decision to ultimately separate Mr. Johnson from employment was one based on his medical restrictions, and the city code and the city rules and regulations were followed to a T with regard to Mr. Johnson's employment. I'm probably going to keep it short and simple and keep it at that and just save the rest for closing once we get to that point. So I'll rest there.
Very good. Mr. Foley, I think we can proceed with your first witness.
Thank you. Yes. So we call Mr. Howard Johnson to the stand. I believe he's already been sworn in. Is that right?
Correct. Mr. Johnson, just want to remind you that you are testifying under oath.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, just before we begin, can you just put your volume up a little bit more, or maybe try to speak a little higher? It'd be better if we can hear you just a little bit more.
Okay.
That's better.
It's better.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Johnson, did you ever work for the city of Annapolis?
Yes, I did.
And do you remember what year that started?
It started in 2009.
Do you remember what position you were in when you started in 2009?
My first position was a maintenance worker.
Okay. And how long were you in that position for?
I say for a period of 9 months. It was contractual, and I was working with Parks and Recs. They sent me over to Spa Road, and the supervisor over there told the supervisor, Phil Cook, that I was the guy that he should hire permanent, because I would be there for him every day. I'd be on time. It wouldn't take off a lot of leave. And he made me permanent in 2 weeks.
Okay. And so you switched to a new position. What was that new position?
That was still a maintenance worker, but I was working on the back of a garbage truck. We still had the refuge and sanitation division.
Okay. And how long did you work there?
I worked there until 2012 when the mayor outsourced the refuge and sanitation department to Bates. And because I didn't have as much longevity as a lot of the guys that worked there, I had a choice of either being a bus driver or working in parking enforcement. I chose parking enforcement. and I went to parking enforcement.
Okay, so you started that job of parking enforcement in 2012, is that right?
Yes.
And how long did you work there for?
I worked there until 2018, and I did a lateral transfer to the utilities department, and I became an operator one.
By that, you mean the equipment operator one?
Yes, equipment operator one, yes.
And that was ultimately the same position you would hold when you were terminated 2 years later, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And so you started in 2018 with the equipment operator one position. Was there a time shortly thereafter that you were injured on the job?
Yes, we were installing a fire hydrant on Lafayette and Murray Avenue, and I went to get the fire hydrant key to turn it off to make sure we had a good shut off. And when I stepped up on the curb, a piece of curb, I guess about 3.5 feet long, it just disconnected from the rest of the curb. It had grass and dirt on it. Nobody knew that it wasn't connected to the rest of the curb, and it slipped and it threw me, and I hurt my hip. All my crew was there right when I fell. They saw the whole accident.
And we'll come back to the that work injury, but I just want to give a little bit more detail about what work you do as an equipment operator one. So you said there's a crew. How many people on average are there in a crew?
Usually it was like 4, sometimes 5, depending on how big the job was we were doing.
What would be the fewest on the crew?
The fewest would be 3.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the job? What do you do as an equipment operator one? Like, what's the job?
Well, I drove dump trucks. I loaded the dump trucks with front end loaders and with backhoes. We had to carry bags of concrete. We had to shovel 57 stone and CR6. We dug around the pipes to get to them and replace them. We did water taps. We did all kind of work.
Is there anyone in the crew who's at any, whose job responsibilities do not include lifting?
Excuse me, to what?
Is there anyone in the crew, the equipment operator one crew, as you described, who does not do any heavy lifting?
Yeah, mostly the truck drivers don't do a lot of heavy lifting. I don't know anyone in the city that has to lift 100 pounds by themselves, because there's always 1, 2 people there to help lift anything that's heavy.
So how does it work with the crew? Is there one person who's designated as a driver, or is that something that the crew decides who drives and who doesn't?
Yeah, they usually have one person that's designated, but we had to have a truck for to pick up the dirt that we had to take back that we were taking out the hole. We had to have a dump truck to take the CR6, to the hole to be able to put it in the hole. Then the truck with the dirt in it had to go back and come back with the 57 stone or whatever that we were going to put in and patch it up until the streets asphalt crew could come and dig it back out and do the hole.
Okay. Going back to your work injury, you mentioned there was a fire hydrant in the curb. And so what body parts did you injure in that? I
injured my hip, and I had to have hip replacement surgery.
Mm-hmm. Was that around February 2019? This surgery? Did you hear me? Mr. Johnson?
I think you may have frozen. Let's hold on a minute. See if it resolves. My suggestion would be, Mr. Foley, to call Mr. Johnson, tell him to log out and log back in again, because that might resolve it.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Berger. Ms. Berger. You're still on mute.
My mute button is fighting with me today.
There
Yes.
we go. It occurred to me that if the city wants to, they're entitled to have a representative from the Department of Public Works sit as the party for the city and during the entirety of the testimony that's delivered today. Just wanted to bring that issue up, and obviously, if you want to go ahead and do that, let's just mention it to Mr. Foley. Make sure he doesn't have an objection.
Okay. Yeah, what I'll do is as long as there's no objection from Mr. Foley, I'll probably ask Marsha Patrick to be that representative.
Okay. Let's wait for him to get back and we'll go ahead and do that.
Sorry about that. I just spoke to Mr. Howard and his internet went down, but I think it's he's logging in back now, I think. So hopefully he's coming back.
There we go. Mr. Foley, I mentioned to Ms. Berger, and it's true that the city of Annapolis is entitled to have a representative participate in, listen to and participate in the entirety of the hearing. So I mentioned it to her, and if you have no objections, I think the city would be interested in having Ms. Marsha Patrick. Is that correct, Ms. Berger? Any objections, Mr. Foley?
No objection.
Ms. Berger, if you could just reach out to Ms. Patrick and tell her to join us.
Yep, I will do that.
Hello, excuse me.
All right, we have you back, Mr. Johnson. Hold on just 1 second. We're getting someone else on the Zoom meeting, and we'll have you resume your testimony in just a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Veloso, Marsha is logging back in.
Let's just wait a moment, and then we'll have Mr. Johnson resume his testimony. There we go. Ms. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. Again, you're here in your capacity as a representative for the city of Annapolis. We will be calling you to testify, I believe, later on in the hearing, but for now, you're just here as a representative for the city, so you can hear the testimony and everything that happens in the case today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Foley, thank you. Mr. Johnson, just want to remind you, you're still under oath, and Mr. Foley, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Veloso. Mr. Johnson, I think we left off with the surgery. You mentioned surgery with your hip. Was that in February 2019?
Yes, that was February 22nd, 2019, when I had the total hip replacement surgery.
And after that surgery, did you eventually return to work?
Yeah, at first I was out on short-term disability.
Okay.
When I came back to work on light duty is when I transferred from utilities to the streets department over on Spa Road. They had a job opening over there that I put in for that was a OSA coordinator, which was a street sweeper coordinator. And when I first got on light duty, they had me doing that job, and I was riding out with the street sweepers. I was doing everything I could to try and find a better way for the street sweeper to be able to get all of the sections in Annapolis that they had to get to, because a lot of times they weren't able to get to them. And I rode around and I watched to find out what deterred them from being able to do a lot of the streets, which were cars that weren't moved so that they could do it. And I was going to have to put up signs to tell them when they couldn't park on certain streets so the street sweeper could come by and do the job. And while I was still doing the job, they said they were going to change the name of it from OSA coordinator and change the title, but they never put the job back up on the board. So I was doing light duty, working in the office. I worked downtown in the public works office, and I had to find all of the shops and stores and food places that had grease traps, and make sure that they were using the people that we were allowed to use. And I had to put this all on the computer and straighten all that out. Also, while I was there, I had to do all the crosswalks in Annapolis, found out whether they were ladder crosswalks or what kind they were and what streets they were on. I did that job for a while I was on light duty. And the whole time I was there, I was doing the job. Marshall was telling me I was doing a good job of it, and it got to the point where I had to go back on full duty.
And so, do you know approximately when that was that you went back to full duty?
I went back, it was supposed to be September the 1st, but it was really the 2nd because I think September 1st was a holiday. So I went back on full duty September 1st.
Is that 2019 or 2018, or which year are you talking about?
That was 2019.
Okay.
That was 2019.
Okay. So after you called it a street sweeper position, do you remember when you came back from, I know you had your surgery, then short-term disability, you came back as the street sweeper position, and that ended around September of 2019. But when did you begin that street sweeper job, if you remember?
Oh, wow.
It's okay if you don't. I'm just trying to get an idea. How long did you work?
I don't remember the exact date.
Okay. And so what was your next position after the street sweeper?
The next position, I had talked to Marsha, and the guy Albert Johnson was retiring, and he was using up the last of his sick leave, and he was out. And the way it occurred was he was supposed to officially be retired around the same time that I was supposed to officially start back on full duty. So Marsha had told me that I should be able to go right into the position that he had, which was on the grass cutting crew. And that didn't have a lot, since I was just coming back off surgery, that didn't have a lot of lifting or anything involved in it. I might have had to lift a weed eater, or do different things, and that would have worked out great. But when we started to go into that thing, Kevin Makel came over from HVAC, and he took the grass cutting crew, and they made me go on the asphalt crew.
Okay, so before you go, hold on. Let's just try to take this one step at a time. So, Miss Patrick, what did she exactly say regarding this position with the grass cutting crew?
She told me that it shouldn't be a problem with me going into the grass cutting crew, because the same time that he was using the last of his sick leave up and officially being retired was the same time that I was coming off light duty and going back on to full duty. So it wouldn't be a problem for me to go into that job position.
And did you want that job?
Yes, I did.
And just to be clear, with that job at that time with the grass cutting crew, would that have complied with your medical restrictions at the time?
Yes, it would have.
And so you said Mr. Kevin Makel got the job instead. Were you ever told why he was given the job instead of you?
I went to talk to Bob Coconel, and I asked him, I said, Bob, Marsha told me that I would be able to go into the grass cutting crew, because they put me on the asphalt crew where you had to do a lot of lifting and he told me, you're operator one. You can't pick where you want to go. You have to go where you're needed. But at the same time, Kevin Makel was coming from HVAC, and he picked that he didn't want to go on the asphalt crew. He wanted to go on the grass cutting crew. So they put him on there. So I'm saying, why can some people pick where they want to go and the other ones can't? I didn't know.
So then you went to asphalt.
And he also, excuse me.
Yeah, you kind of broke
excuse me 1 minute though, but Bob Coconel also told me that it wasn't Marsha Patrick's call. And I didn't understand that either, because she's his boss.
Okay, so the hierarchy is, just tell me the level of hierarchy above you. I know you're equipment operator one. Who are the people above you in order?
That above me? Okay, I was equipment operator one.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, you're frozen.
Over top of Phil Cook, we had Bob Coconel.
Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry.
And over top and downtown,
Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry. You froze for a good 30 seconds. Can you just start again?
Okay. On the job, on the asphalt crew, directly over top of me was Mark Parker. He was the crew leader and the supervisor, the immediate supervisor on the job. Over top of him, he had to report to Phil Cook. Phil Cook was a supervisor of streets, the whole streets division. Over top of him was Bob Coconel. I think he was the superintendent of streets. And over top of him, when you go downtown to Gorman Street, you had Marsha Patrick. At the time, she was the acting public works director, and she was over him. Okay. And like I told him, I said, Marsha said that I should be able to go right into this grass cutting crew, because it was coming about right at the time that I was coming on full duty. He told me, you can't pick where you want to go. You're operator one. He said it's not Marsha Patrick's call. Okay. I couldn't understand that.
Okay. And are you aware whether or not Mr. Albert Johnson did in fact retire?
Yes, he retired. He retired right around the time that I was coming back on full duty, because he came in, turned his uniforms in and everything.
Just to be clear,
that time,
when you came back on full duty, was that in September of 2019 that you said?
Yes, that was September 2nd, 2019.
Okay. When you were released, or when you went back to full duty, did you have a medical release saying you were able to go back full-time, full duty?
Yeah, they said that I could go back to full duty.
Okay.
But at first they had me out driving the utility truck. But the utility truck pulls the roller, and it has the hand tamp and all that on the trailer utility truck. and I'm a good driver, so they wanted somebody that could drive with the trailer on it. And mostly I was driving and doing that at first, because I was still on light duty when they first put me on
Mr. Johnson, you froze again.
I was spreading asphalt. I was spreading CR6.
Mr. Johnson.
57 Stone. I was driving.
Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry, you froze for a good 30 seconds. Can you just repeat what you said? I think you were talking about your duties with the asphalt crew.
Yes, I drove the utility truck. The utility truck pulled the roller, and it had the hand tamp, and also on the back of they had the 5-gallon buckets of diesel fuel. The diesel fuel was used to wet down the rakes and the shovels and to come along so that the asphalt, when you were on it, wouldn't stick to them. I had to make sure that was full before we left the yard. I had to fill all the water buckets up before we left the yard, because they had to have, and I had to fill the roller up with water before we left the yard. We also had to have tack. The tack is what you spread around the hole to make the asphalt adhere to the sides of the hole that you're doing. So I had to have that 5-gallon bucket filled up before we left the yard too.
Okay,
so it incurred a lot of lifting the tamper off the back of the trailer, lifting the trailer gate down.
Okay. Did there come a time where you hurt yourself on the job again?
Yes, and it was during the time that I was lifting the trailer gate down the back of the trailer. I was trying not to put too much weight on my right side, which was where I just had the hip replacement, and I was trying to lift these things, the 5-gallon buckets of stuff that we had on there, the hand tamper. You had to lift that down and pull it to the hole, and I end up I don't know how I twisted my back a certain way, and I hurt my back.
And just to be clear, when you had your surgery, you did the street sweeping job, you then you try to get the grass cutting, or you wanted the grass cutting job, but instead you got the asphalt. From the time you started working with the asphalt crew until the time of your injury, up until that time of your injury, were you able to do the job with the asphalt crew?
Yes, I was able to do the job, and I mean, I didn't want to be on it, but I made the best of it, and I worked hard every day that I was there.
Okay.
And they wanted me to stay on the crew. First, Phil Cook told me, he said, "Well, you just be on there till we get somebody else." But that never came about. So I was there permanently.
Permanently. So did you work there? Was there any other jobs that you worked? What was it, if any? What was the next job?
Excuse me. The next job, after I hurt my back, they put me back on restrictions, and they put me on light duty. So I was in the office first answering phones, and then they told me that Dan Horvath I would be working with him. So I went and I was working with him. I was driving fire trucks to Dorsey, Maryland, and different places to be repaired. I was going to Calvert County and Laurel, Maryland.
Mr. Johnson, you froze again. Mr. Johnson.
Parts on the shelves and put them in the same row and put stickers on them. Show them. Excuse me?
Mr. Johnson, sorry, you froze again for the 30 seconds. It tends to happen every couple minutes. I don't know what the issue is, but you were mentioning, I think you were driving, I think you said fire trucks, but you froze for about 30 seconds. Can you just describe again your answer?
Okay, I was driving fire trucks to be repaired to Dorsey, Maryland, and different places. I drove one of the EMT vehicles up to have a window replaced in the back of it. I went to Laurel, Maryland, and Calvert County and Baltimore to pick up parts for the different vehicles that needed parts to be picked up. And when I wasn't doing that and driving the fire trucks, Dan had me working over on Forest Drive at the fire department in the parts room, and I had to consolidate all the parts by number and put them on the shelf where they were supposed to put. I had to label them, and then I had to find a way for them to be able to go into the computer. So when they needed the part, all they had to do was go to the computer and look it up so that they could find the part number and go right to it instead of looking around in the room to try to find it where they didn't know where it was.
Okay.
I didn't get to completely finish the job, putting them all in the computer, but I also did the same thing on Spar Road in the mechanic shop in the parts department and labeled all of them, consolidated everything by number, and labeled the shelves that was on.
And all those job duties, that was under Dan Horwath, is that right?
Yeah, all that was under Dan Horwath. And he told me that he had a lot of work for me to do. You know what I mean? He even came and got me later a couple of times to go and drive a fire truck up to drop it off to be repaired when I had went back into the office. You know what I mean? But he said he had a lot of work still left for me to do.
Okay, and we'll come there in a second. But the when you were working with Dan Horwath, what department is he with?
He's the fleet supervisor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so
all the vehicles they use all around the city.
Right. You had your accident, and I think you said, well, when was your accident in 2019 when you went back to the asphalt?
The asphalt crew was September 25th.
Okay. So you had your injury at work on September 25th, 2019. And then I think you said then you came back light duty. When did you start your light duty after that second work accident?
I think it was the second day after that I started, because I went to see a doctor and he put me back on restrictions.
Okay. And is that when you started working with Dan, or I think you said you worked in the office first and then you worked with Dan?
Yeah, I went in the office, and then Bob came and told me that I would be working with Dan Horwath.
Okay. So is it around October or so that you started working with Dan, or do you remember when it was?
I think it was the end of September.
Okay. And you mentioned these job duties that you were doing for Dan Horwath and in the fleet maintenance department. Did your physical condition ever impact your ability to do the job with Dan Horwath?
No, it didn't. It didn't. Because if any of the parts were heavy, I didn't have to lift them. The people at the place where I went to pick them up, put them on the truck.
Okay, so you're really just driving and organizing, I think you said parts?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any other physical requirements for that job when you were on the job, other than having someone else do the lifting?
No, it wasn't. That basically, to me, that would have been the ideal job. But he said he didn't have an opening.
Okay.
You know what I mean? For that job at the time that he could hire me for that job.
Okay, so I want to flesh that a little bit more. But when you worked for Dan, did he ever give you any compliments about your performance?
Yeah, I did a good job. Mr. Foley, every job they put me on, I did a good job of. Every job they put me on, light duty, at driving, doing everything, I did a good job of it.
Do you know if he said anything to you about your performance, or did he give you any performance reviews or anything that would actually indicate rather than just your impression?
Yes, he did. He did say I did a good job of consolidating all the stuff in the parts room. He said the parts room looked good, you know, and the driving jobs, yes.
And you mentioned that on this job with Dan, or under Dan, that someone else was doing the lifting. Did you have to do anything that required lifting more than 10 pounds?
No.
Did that job with Dan require any prolonged stooping or squatting?
No, it didn't.
What about running or climbing?
No, definitely.
So
definitely not that.
Was there anything about that job that did not comply with your medical restrictions?
No.
So
that would have been the ideal job.
Okay. And so you mentioned that you said there was more work to do. So describe what happened when you you seems like you stopped that position at some point in time. So describe what happened.
Yeah, Dan had said he still had a lot of work for me to do, but then one morning I used to always meet him in his office before I went out either to the fire department or I went out to pick up a part or whatever. And he told me that Bob had came and told him that I have to go back over into the office, Bob Coconel. And I was like, why do I have to go back over to the office? He said, because Elvis Makel and Letitia Granger are going on vacation and he needs somebody to cover the phones and he needed somebody to pass out the recycle bins and the trash bins and all of that stuff. So I went over to see Bob and he said, yeah, he gave me a paper saying that I was going back into the office over on Spa Road to cover for Elvis and for Letitia Granger.
And approximately when was this?
I think it was the 12th of, excuse me?
I think you said you started working with in late September 2019. So do you know approximately how long you were with Dan?
I think it was November the 12th that he gave me that paper. I think it was saying that I was going back into the office.
And did you have any other conversations with Bob Coconauer when he told you? It seems like you had a conversation with Dan and then you went to Bob. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dan told me that Bob had told him that Elvis Makel and Letitia Granger were going on vacation. So he had to have me back over to cover the phones and everything over in the office. I talked to Bob and he said, yeah, because they're going on vacation, he needed me back in the office.
Right.
When I went back over to the office, I went right to both of them. I said, y'all get ready to go on vacation. They said, this is the first I ever heard of it. I'm not going on vacation. You know what I mean? So why Bob would tell Dan that, you know what I mean, and then put me back in the office, I don't know. But they both said that they weren't going on vacation.
Just to be clear, you said both of them. You mean Mr. Elvis
both
Makel and Miss Granger?
Yes.
Where did this
they
conversation take place?
That's the first they ever heard of it. Excuse me?
Where did this take place? Was it in the office or somewhere else?
That took place in the office, the street's office. It's a trailer right there on Spa Road.
Was this around the time that you were informed about transitioning from the fleet maintenance with Dan to the new position within the office, or was this much later?
Yes, I went after I talked to Bob and he told me that he needed me to cover the phones. I went directly over to the office and I asked both of them. And they told me this is the first I heard of it. I'm not going on vacation.
Okay, so just to be clear, they denied that they're going on vacation.
Yes. But I started answering the phones. Elvis got off from work at a certain time of day, then I'd go and I'd answer the phones in his place. You know what I mean? Because while they were there, it wasn't really a whole lot for me to do. But I was dropping the mail off. I was dropping off the payroll down to Gorman Street. I was helping to pass out some recycle bins or whatever. I couldn't do any lifting, but I could roll them out to the people's car and they would load them into their own vehicles. I just started working in the office then.
So you started working in the office, and was there any time when you were sorry, let me step back. When you were working in the office, is this in the same area that Elvis and Miss Granger work in, or do they work in another?
Yes. My desk was right behind Elvis's desk, and Letitia Granger's desk was to the right over in the corner.
Okay, so they're all in the same proximate area, is that right?
Yes, we're all in the same area.
Do you recall them ever going on any sort of prolonged vacations or even any vacations at all?
No. They had no intention on going on vacation. That was just what was used to tell me I had to go back over in the office.
And do you know who, if anyone, replaced you with Dan Horwath?
No one replaced me. I guess he used the guys the mechanics to do certain things. While I was over in the office, he did come and get me.
Mr. Johnson, could you hold on 1 second? Ms. Berger?
Yeah, I was just objecting to speculation.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, just try to limit to what your personal knowledge is. Were you?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
Sure. Were you informed of anyone who replaced you with Dan Horwath? It's a yes or no.
No, because no one replaced me because they had a guy that was working over in transportation that was going to get parts for them in transportation and all that over there. Okay. So they already had a person that was hired specifically for that job. So nobody replaced me working with Dan. He had some mechanics over there that he would send out to pick out one. One of them's name was Jay Tucker.
Okay. And so when you went back to the office and you were working in the proximate area of Mr. Makel and Ms. Granger, what were your job duties?
When I went back to the office?
Yeah.
I took the payroll down and dropped it off. I picked up the mail from down in the Public Works Administrative Department. I answered the phones when Elvis or Tish Granger weren't around. Elvis left at like, I think 1 or 1:30. When Bob moved me back into the office, at first my time was from 6 o'clock to 1:30 in the afternoon. When he moved me back to the office, he changed my time from 8 o'clock to 4:30 in the evening. So I was the last one there. I had to lock up everything, lock up the trailer, put everything, lock up everything.
Okay. And were you able to do this job considering your physical condition?
Yes, I was.
Did you ever receive any complaints about your performance in this office position?
No, he never said anything about I was doing a great job. Well, at one time, Phil Cook told me because the police had called and the lights were out. Excuse me?
Mr. Johnson, just hold up.
Go ahead, Ms. Berger.
I'm objecting as to what Phil Cook told him.
Mr. Foley?
Well, it's my understanding this is an informal hearing. So the rules of evidence, I'm sure, are lax, but.
It is. I'll allow it. But I'll note Ms. Berger's objection for the record.
Mr. Johnson, you can go ahead and say what you were saying.
Okay, because you had asked me if anybody had ever said anything about my job over in the office. One evening when I was there by myself, the police had called and said that the light was out over on it's a street where Calvert Street and I forgot right there by the I forget the name of the street, but the light was out and they had to find a way to put up a sign or do something so that people would know that light was out. And first I called Elvis and he told me to call the police and tell them so that they could go out and put somebody out there, you know what I mean, to take care of it and make sure that there were no accidents or people running through the lights. And I did that. I took care of that situation. And Phil did say I did a good job the next morning when he came in of handling that situation.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned numerous jobs that you did with light duty, or even when you went back to full duty with the asphalt crew after your injury in 2018. In any of these jobs, the light duty jobs or with the asphalt crew, did you ever receive any complaints about your performance in any of the positions?
Well, no, I didn't receive any points of that I was doing a real good job on those.
I mean, just any complaints that you were doing a bad job?
A bad job? No, never.
Okay. And so did there come a time that you received a notice of intent to terminate?
Yeah, I was in the office and they said that Bob wanted to see me in his office. And I went to Bob's office. Bob was there and the representative of the union rep was in there. And he had a letter and he had a copy for all three of us. And he read this letter, a letter with intent to terminate, but disability termination. And he said, and I read it, it said it's not a disciplinary termination. You haven't done anything wrong, but it's a disability termination. My first thought was, why is it worded as a termination anyway? Why wouldn't they just say that they were putting me in for disability retirement? You know, so but I read it and I'm like, their doctor said that he felt as though I'll never be able to go back to doing the work that I was doing. And it was his opinion that I'd never be able to do that again. And this doctor is the same doctor they send you to.
Okay, the doctor, hold on 1 second. Let me just try and make this as fast as possible. Mr. Johnson, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Is this the notice of intent to terminate that you received?
That's the notice of intent to terminate that they called over and gave me.
Okay. And it's dated
And then they
March
sent
5.
me back over to the office.
Mr. Johnson, you froze again, but
And
can you just repeat what you said? You froze again? Mr. Johnson, you there? Mr. Johnson, can you hear me?
yes,
Oh, sorry, you froze. That was the notice of intent to terminate that you received in March, is that right?
excuse me.
That was the notice of intent to terminate that you received in March of 2020, is that right?
Yes, that was a notice of intent to terminate.
Okay. And was this the last time you worked for the city when you received that?
Mr. Foley, I couldn't understand.
You did not
It was
understand.
March 5th, yes, March 5th, 2020.
Okay. And so, but did you ever
I
work?
couldn't understand why the letter was worded the way.
Okay. I understand your confusion, but did you ever work for the city after that date?
No. March 5th was the last day I worked.
And so they never allowed you to come back on the job in any capacity?
No, they never did. They said they didn't have any light duty for me to do.
Who said that?
Marsha Patrick, I think Trisha Hopkins. They said there was they said there was no more light duty around the city for me to do from any of the departments.
Okay. And let me just try to share one more picture with you. Mr. Johnson, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. It looks like this is signed by Dr. Dabbs. Was he one of your treating physicians?
Yeah, he's my primary care doctor. He's the doctor that sees me all the time.
Okay. And so it looks like this duty status report is dated in July. I think it's either the 22nd or 23rd. I can't really read his handwriting. 2020.
Yeah, I think it's the 22nd.
Okay. And this duty status report, is this something that you gave to the doctor, or is this something the city sent for him to
the city sends you out every time you go to a doctor. If you are out sick or you've been injured or anything, you always have to take one of these sheets to the doctor for the doctor to fill out.
Okay.
And they always want to know when you're going to be able to return back to work and when is a reasonable amount of time, and they basically want the doctor to tell you when you're going to be well. You know, and my injuries were hip replacement and injury to my L3, L4, L4, L5, and L5, and S1 lumbar spine that they want to do surgery on. How can you tell somebody when they're going to be ready to go back to work? What date? Give me a date. That's what they want.
Okay, I understand. And so Dr. Dab looks like he says you can return to work on modified duty with no restrictions except for less than 0 hours of climbing, bending, running, and 10-pound limit with pushing and lifting.
Yes.
Mr. Foley, could I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure. Go ahead.
Earlier, we were talking about the Mr. Johnson testified regarding the disability termination notice dated March 5, 2020. Is that your Exhibit 7? I just want to make sure that we're getting the exhibit numbers that you're referring to, that Mr. Johnson's referring to. Is that Exhibit number 7?
I believe it's
actually
number 8.
Number 8. Okay. Exhibit number 8 is a notice of intent to terminate.
Right. Yeah, page 72 and 73.
Okay. And right now we're talking about the duty status report.
Right.
Dated. Is that is that Exhibit 6?
Yes, Exhibit 6, page 68 and 69. I think it's dated July 22nd, 2020.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Mr. Johnson, did you later get another notice in September of 2020?
Yes, they had notice to appeal to. I had to appeal that. Well, I had to put in an appeal to see the Civil Service Board. It had 4 empty spaces on the back, and I had to sign one of them to say which one I wanted to do. And I was going to get the lawyer to come in, but I had the union president. He was going to come, and they told him he couldn't come, so I went by myself.
Okay.
They had the hearing.
Just before we move forward, was this hearing before or after you received a September 2020 notice?
September 2020.
September of 2020, you said that you received another notice about your termination.
Oh, you talking about the notice? The notice to go on with the termination. After the hearing, they decided that they were going to go on with the termination.
Okay. So your hearing was before.
As of such and such and such a date, I would be terminated from the city.
Gotcha. So your hearing was before that notice was issued upholding the termination. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And was that signed by
the president of the union?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. The president of the union wanted to go to that hearing with me, and he was on the phone with him. They told him that he couldn't come to the hearing. It wasn't a union matter.
Okay.
He couldn't come to the hearing.
Mr. Foley, what hearing are we talking about? I'm very confused.
That's what I'm trying to get at as well. Mr. Johnson, just describe, you got a notice in March of 2020. It sounds like you were then given an option to have a hearing about that termination or intent to terminate?
Yes.
Okay. You selected that.
I had a hearing. Go ahead.
No, please finish. So you selected an option. What was that option?
That option was to have I don't think it was the civil service hearing, or one of them where I could bring my lawyer. I think it was informal. That's what it was. It was an informal hearing, and Kerry Berger was there, Marsha Patrick was there, and the new director that had just come on board, Michael Johnson, was there, and I was there by myself because they wouldn't let the union president come to the hearing.
And so, Mr. Johnson, after that hearing, you later got.
Hold on a second, Mr. Foley.
Sure.
Ms. Berger.
Yeah, I'm objecting to his characterization of the union president's availability.
Mr. Johnson, we don't need to go into that discussion right now. After you had a hearing, apparently, then you received a September 2020 notice upholding the decision, right?
When they left, they let me talk, and they let me tell them what was going on. They say already they had 10 days to make their decision, and they would send it to me by mail. But about 3 days after the hearing, I got it in my mailbox at home saying that they had made the decision to go on with the termination.
Okay. And at that point in time, you made
So-
another appeal to this civil service board.
Yeah, I wrote an appeal. They said you had a certain amount of time to write an appeal letter, and that's what I did.
Okay. Prior to being terminated, by that I mean, let's say termination, the notice to terminate in March of 2020. Prior to March 5, 2020, prior to that, did you ever lose your commercial driver's license?
Yes, I didn't lose it. Before I had surgery, I was scheduled to take my CDL test again, because you have to renew it. Before I had surgery, I turned it in because I knew that I couldn't do the squatting and bending and all that stuff that I had to do doing the test for the CDL. So I turned it in, but you have a year to be able to go back and get it if you turn it in.
Okay, so and just to be clear, when you said you turned it in prior to your surgery, this is the surgery you had, I think, in February 2019?
Yes, it was a hip surgery.
Okay. And was there a time that you regained the CDL license?
Yeah, I went back and I got it. I
When did
got
you
my
get it back?
CDLs back. I think, was it June or July? I went back and I got them back.
Of which year?
The same year.
As the surgery, so 2019?
Yeah,
Okay. And
because
when
the
you,
surgery was February 22nd, 2019.
okay. And so you got the CDL back. How did you get it back? Did you have to take an exam or physical, or what was the process?
I went back and I took the exam. I didn't have to do the physical part, but because it was within a year, I was able to get it back. You have a year cushion in between where if you turn it in, you're allowed to be able to go back and get it.
Okay. And when you regained your CDL license, did you inform anyone with the city?
Yes, I did, because they sent me a letter. Marsha Patrick and Patricia Hopkins had me come into Human Resources, and they had a letter, and that letter said, well, since you voluntarily gave up your CDLs because you couldn't pass the test, you're no longer capable of doing the operator one job that you had because you don't fit the criteria to be able to do it because you don't have your CDLs. And I told them, no, I do have my CDLs, and I gave them the paperwork, and they said that they didn't know anything about that before they wrote that letter. You know what I mean? But I gave them the paperwork showing that I'd taken my test and got my CDLs back.
And just to be clear, you had this conversation that you just described with Ms. Patrick. Was that before March 5, 2020?
Well, yeah, that was way before March the 5th, 2020.
Was this in 2019? Like when you first got it back, I think you said June or July.
Yeah, that was in 2019.
The conversation took place in 2019.
That was in 2019. March 5th. That just hit me by surprise because I had no idea that was coming.
Okay. And so, Mr. Johnson, I just earlier showed you the restrictions that Dr. Dabbs put you on. You're treating your primary care doctor about the 10-pound limit and the no running and squatting and stooping. You mentioned earlier that the equipment operator one position, they work in crews, and one of those is a driver. Would any of the restrictions I just showed you that Dr. Dabbs put you on, would you have been able to work as a driver considering those restrictions, or would you not have been able to?
Yes, I would have.
Okay. And so you're saying that job did not require, as a driver on the equipment operator one crew, lifting or carrying more than 10 pounds?
Yeah, no, I didn't have to do a lot of lifting, maybe a shovel full of dirt.
How long would you have to shovel for?
Sometime when we had an operator that was so good, it wasn't a lot of shovel work left, but sometimes you just had to clean up around the hole with a broom or with a flathead shovel and shovel it back into it, and they tamp it down, until so the cars could go over and it wouldn't all come out until the streets department could come and take the CR6 out and put asphalt in and finish the hole.
Okay. So as an equipment operator one crew, if as someone who's on that crew, even if you're not the driver, do you still have to do heavy lifting, or is there someone, or can that
No,
be
nobody,
modified?
Mr. Foley, I don't know anybody that works for the city of Annapolis that has to lift 100 pounds. Nobody, because there's always somebody else there to help do the job. Even if they lift up one of those trash cans downtown that are heavy, that they put the liners inside, it's always 2 or 3 people there to help do the lifting.
Okay. And so, do you believe, in your opinion, that lifting 100 pounds is an essential job duty of an equipment operator one?
No, not in duty wise where you're out there doing it, but on paper, it says you have to be able to lift 100 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as really being out there doing it, no.
And prior to your notice of intent to terminate in March of 2020, did you ever have did any director or supervisor of yours ask how they could accommodate you because of your condition?
No, they just had me in the office, working in the office.
Did you ever have a conversation or meeting with any of your directors or supervisors in any way where you could discuss what you needed in order to do your job as an equipment operator one?
No.
What about with any other job or position with the city?
No.
And prior to that March 5 notice, about the notice to intent to terminate, were you ever informed of why you could not continue doing your job in the office that you were doing it in March 2020?
No, like I told you, that paperwork, when he called me over to his office and gave me that paper, that hit me by surprise because I wasn't expecting that. Nobody told me anything.
And prior to being terminated, were you ever offered any other positions?
No.
Were you ever, just to be clear, ever offered a bus driver one position?
No, I wasn't.
Would you have been qualified if that had been offered to you prior to your termination?
At first, I wouldn't have been qualified because you have to have your passenger endorsements for your CDLs to do the bus driver job. But it was something that I could have easily obtained and gotten.
What's the process of getting this passenger endorsement you just spoke of?
You have to go down to motor vehicles and take the test.
Mm-hmm.
And before that time, they were allowing the bus drivers to go down with a city bus and take the test down at the Department of Motor Vehicles. So it wouldn't have been hard to go down and get my passenger endorsements on my CDL.
Okay. I'm sorry, just couldn't hear you well. You said it would not have been hard to go downtown to get the license.
No, it wouldn't have been hard to get my passenger endorsements on my CDLs because for the period of time they were allowing the bus drivers to take the city buses and go down there and take their tests with.
Okay.
So, it wouldn't have taken much to get that endorsement.
Are you aware of any prior accidents or issues or marks on your driving record that would prohibit you from obtaining the passenger endorsement?
No, I have a good driving record. No.
And if you had been offered the bus driver one position, would that job have complied with Dr. Dabb's restrictions that were issued in July of 2020?
Yes, it would have.
And just, I think bus driver one seems self-explanatory, but just describe what the job duties are of that, to your understanding.
For bus driver one?
Yes.
They
Objection.
Mr. Johnson, are you?
Go ahead. Can you get that in some other way? Mr.
Yeah.
Foley?
Mr. Johnson, are you aware of what the job duties are of a bus driver one?
They drive the buses.
Hold on, Mr. Johnson. Yes, sir. Are you aware? Do you have personal knowledge about what the job duties are of a bus driver one?
Yes, I am.
And how are you aware of that?
I'm aware because during the time that I was working with parking enforcement, we're all there in transportation. So I saw everything that they do. You know what I mean? I know they have a time schedule where they have to be at a certain point at a certain time. You know what I mean? And I was right there with him for a period of time from like 2012 to like 2018.
Okay.
We all worked right out of transportation department.
And so from your personal observation and the many years that you worked with them, was their primary, based on your observation, was their primary duty driving the bus?
Yes.
And just want to talk briefly about, we talked about your 2 injuries, one in 2018, one in 2019, one which required surgery. Had you ever had any injuries to your back or hips prior to the 2018 accident?
Objection.
Yeah, I injured my back in 2009.
Mr. Johnson,
Early.
hold on.
Hold on. Ms. Berger, go ahead.
I mean, it's sort of getting into like a workers' comp merits type of line of questioning, and I'm not sure of the relevancy.
Mr. Foley?
I'm just having him talk about this because if he was fired based on his disability and we're claiming he's entitled to protections under the ADA, all of his medical conditions are relevant, including accidents that might have occurred prior to 2018.
Ms. Berger, do you have anything else to say?
I don't see how it's relevant.
I'm going to allow it, and
I'll be brief.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Foley.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, my question was prior to 2018, had you ever injured your back or hips?
Yes, I injured my back in 2009. And I went to a chiropractor for a little while, and it alleviated the pain I had in my back. So I didn't have a problem with my back from 2009 until I hurt my back in 2018, 2019, until I hurt my back on the asphalt crew lifting that stuff off the back of the truck,
right?
The trailer.
Okay. Are you aware of anyone else who was given light duty for a prolonged period of time?
Yeah, Eric Bauer works with the utility department.
Objection.
Mr. Foley, what's the relevance?
Just that the fact that other people have been accommodated for long-term, for prolonged periods of time for light duty, yet Mr. Howard Johnson was not given the opportunities that other people were given.
I would suggest to you it might be more appropriate to draw that out through the testimony of other witnesses than Mr. Johnson himself.
Okay, well, we can come back to that with other witnesses.
Okay.
Let me just see if I have any other questions. Okay, nothing further.
Before we have cross-examination, let's take a 5-minute bathroom break, and we'll resume with Ms. Berger with cross-examining Mr. Johnson. Is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Just let's keep it brief and try to be back in 5 minutes.
Can I ask everyone to turn their cameras off while they're on break?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and restart as soon as Mr. Johnson comes back. Mr. Callahan, are you there? Just checking. Can you hear us? Sam? Hold on just a moment, folks. I want to make sure that I see Ms. Beard, and she can't hear us. Can you hear us, Ms. Beard?
Yes.
Okay. Sam, can you hear us? Mr. Callahan? Okay, before we resume, I just want to make sure that he's back on the call. Hold on just a second here. Sam, are you there? Can you hear us? Sam Callahan?
I'm here.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, Ms. Berger, I think you can go ahead and start your cross.
Mr. Chair, before we begin, I had sent over my exhibits to Hillary just in case something malfunctioned on my end when it came to sharing my screen. And I asked her if she would be able to present for me because the Adobe version that I have doesn't have the ability to zoom in. So I'm trying to sort of avoid all of the sensitive information that could potentially come up on the screen. So I've asked Hillary to be able to present for me when asked. Is that all right?
Absolutely, no problem at all. And just so that the record here is clear, Miss Hillary Raftovich is the, I forget her exact title. Hillary, can you hear us? What's your title, just so we have it on the record?
I'm the ombudsman for the city of Annapolis.
Okay, thank you. And she's helping us with the exhibits. All right, thank you, Hillary. All right, let's go ahead and proceed, Ms. Berger.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning.
Can you, I know you sort of touched upon it a little bit during your direct, but can you describe to the Civil Service Board what kind of tasks that equipment operator ones perform routinely?
Equipment one operator drives dump trucks. He loads trucks with front end loaders, backhoes. He has to do some manual labor, shoveling and doing different things. And one of the requirements says you have to lift 100 pounds.
Okay. You said specifically as it relates to the asphalt crew that there's a lot of heavy lifting that's associated with that. Can you describe what kind of heavy lifting occurs on the asphalt crew?
We have five gallon buckets of diesel fuel. We have 5 gallon buckets of tack, which is like that liquid tar you put down around the hole so the asphalt adheres to the side of the hole. We have 5 gallon buckets of water, and we have to fill those up every day and lift those up to make sure that the the hand tamper, and the different machines have water in them. You had to lift the tailgate on the back of the utility truck, because that's what I was driving, the utility truck that pulls the trailer with the roller and the hand tamp and all that on it. So all those are heavy.
Do you have to, when you get into some of these trucks, do you have to climb into them?
It's just a thing. If you're getting into a dump truck, you're stepping up on the steps. If you're getting into a pickup truck, you're basically just putting your foot up and sliding across the seat.
How much time would you say is spent doing some type of labor that's associated with the heavy lifting that you just described?
How much time is spent when you're doing what?
So you just went through a list of things while assigned to the asphalt crew that have heavy lifting associated with it. How much time do during a shift, we'll just limit it to one shift, would you say routinely is spent dedicated to that type of heavy lifting?
Okay, we would go out to a street that the supervisor had previously marked that we're going to cut and we're going to replace the asphalt in. And the first thing we had to do was get the cutter off the back of the truck. And the cutter was to cut the streets up so that the backhoe can stick the teeth in and pull that asphalt up out the hole. Then we had to take the tools and stuff off. We had to take off the tack. We had to take off the diesel fuel, and we had to put all this stuff close to the hole so they'd be ready to use it. And I would say basically an hour doing that, taking that stuff off and lifting it and make it accessible to the other workers. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't saying, I was letting you finish. I wasn't sure if you were done or not.
Oh, okay. And we just have to make all the tools accessible. We put the shovels, the rakes, and the come-alongs in the bucket with the tack, so that they can be coated with with the diesel fuel, so they could be coated. So when the asphalt comes, because we have to wait for the asphalt truck, so we have to pull the utility truck up, because that has a tailgate down. We have to lift that tailgate back up and lock it in and pull up, so that the dump truck that's coming first with the CR6, after the backhoe has dug the hole out, we have to wait for them to dump that. Then we spread that. Then we have to take the hand tamper and put it in the hole, and you have to tamp that all down. You have to tamp the CR6 down. After you tamp that down, then you wait for the asphalt truck to come, the dump truck that went to get the asphalt from Reliable. They come and they dump the asphalt. They dump the first layer. After they dump the first layer and we spread that out, then we have to put the hand tamp back in the hole again and tamp that down. So it's tamped down real good, so that when you finish the job, it doesn't sink. So we tamp that down real good. Then we had to lift the hand tamper back up out of the hole and put it on the side out of the way, and the dump truck will back up again. And we put the second layer on. The second layer on you put up, and you put it a little bit higher than the street, so that when you tamp it down, it tamps down close to level to the street, but the cars going over it's gonna be level. So I can't.
So
I can't give you an exact time on how long it takes to do all that. You know what I mean? But it involves a lot of lifting, and lifting out the hole and putting it back in the hole, and then taking it off the truck, putting it back on the truck.
So you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, tools. Can you describe for the Civil Service Board what kind of tools you're referencing?
Okay, we use a hard rake. You know, a hard rake, not the leaf rake, a hard rake. We use flat edge shovels, and we use the rounded edge shovels. We use a come along. A come along is what you use to pull the asphalt and make it level. And only certain people use that because it's a little art to doing that. And usually the crew leader and somebody do that. Besides the 5-gallon buckets of tack and diesel fuel and all that, basically that's what we put down by the hole. We have the cutter off the truck, but once we've cut the hole, we can basically just put that up, wait for that to be lift that back up on the truck.
So you just mentioned a cutter. Is that the same thing as the hand tamper that you mentioned earlier, or are those two different things?
No, there are two different things. The cutter has a blade on it, and it has to have water in it too to be filled in. And the blade, after the supervisor comes out and marks the square patch that he wants to be cut out, that's broken up or has a big hole in it or whatever the reason why we're replacing it, and we have to cut a square around that area that has to be cut out, and you let the lever down on that and you just walk behind it, and it rolls and it cuts the asphalt. So when the backhoe comes and stick the teeth in, they can just pull that whole asphalt out the hole and it leaves nothing but the square there. Then they dig the dirt and whatever they have to do.
Do you know approximately how much the cutter weighs?
No, I don't know exactly how much it weighs. But when that's lifted down, it's always two people that lift it. One lift the front, one lift the back.
So is it fair to say that it's a heavy piece of equipment?
I wouldn't say that the cutter is real heavy, but it's heavy enough that it's awkward enough for somebody to grab the front and somebody to grab the back when you're taking it off the truck.
What about the hand tamper?
The hand tamper is heavy. It has a metal plate on it. It has a motor. It has a water tank, and it has a metal plate because the metal plate it vibrates. When you start it up, it vibrates to tamp the asphalt down and pack it down.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier on your direct examination that you have to carry bags of concrete. How heavy would you say that is?
When we're putting a fire hydrant in, you have to have a couple bags of concrete because once you put those cinder blocks around the fire hydrant to keep it from moving and keep it in place, once you put it in, then you bust those bags of concrete over those cinder blocks, and eventually that hardens so that that fire hydrant is going to stay in place because it has to be a certain level above the ground, and you have to put it in so it stays in place. When we lift those bags of concrete up, there's usually two people that grab those, and usually only go if we pull over in the yard was over by the police department on Taylor Avenue. When you pull over there, you pull right in front of the trailer, and somebody just lifts it up and puts it right on the trailer. So it's no more than maybe 7 or 8 feet from where the asphalt, I mean, not the asphalt, the concrete is, for them to put it on the trailer.
So my question is, do you know how heavy the bag of concrete is?
I don't know if they're 50 pounds or what. No, I don't know for sure.
Okay. Are there any other bags or I guess bags of materials that equipment operator ones utilize?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. You also had mentioned earlier the trash cans downtown. Do you have an idea of how heavy those trash cans are?
No. Those are heavy. It takes 3 people to lift those.
Okay. So going
and I'm talking about the concrete part of the trash can that stays there all the time. I'm not talking about the insert that you lift out and dump when you dump in the trash. I'm talking about when they have to lift up those concrete trash receptacles.
I understand. Just so the chronological order is clear to the Civil Service Board, your injury involving your hip, you said took place on February 1st, 2018,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. But then you did not have surgery until February 22nd, 2019?
Yes, because I had to find a doctor that would do the surgery. At first, they were telling me that they wanted me to lose like 50 pounds. And you know, if a person could just lose 50 pounds, just like talking about it, most of the people around America wouldn't be buying all the exercise equipment that they buy. It's not easy to lose 50 pounds. So I had to find a doctor that was willing to do the work. You know what I mean? Because he knew how bad I needed to have the surgery. He knew I needed it bad. And he said, look, man, I'm going to do this because I know you need it bad. And you can work on losing the weight after I do the surgery. And Dr. Mess at Howard County Hospital performed the surgery.
Okay. Did you work full duty at any point during that February 1st, 2018 date and the date you had the hip surgery on February 22nd, 2019?
Did I work full duty? No, after I injured myself, I was on light duty, and then I went out on as a matter of fact, I worked from, and it was light duty. I worked until the 21st, I think, because I was working downtown in Public Works Administrative Office at the desk in the front there, the desk that greets people when they come in and answering phones. I was setting up for bulk metal pickups. I was answering calls for people that didn't get their trash picked up, to call out to get people to go back and get their trash. So I worked until the 21st. I worked until the day before I had the surgery on the 22nd on light duty.
Okay. And then you had your surgery on February 22nd, 2019. When did you return in a light duty capacity? Do you recall?
What day? What date? I don't know exactly the date that I returned on light duty.
Okay.
But it was a while. I had to go through having in-home physical therapy and a lot of different things to try to get back.
Okay.
Get back to the strength that I could even walk. I had to walk on a walker.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you're cutting up a little bit. Can you hear me?
Stable again. Okay, it's back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
At this time, Hillary, can I ask that you put up respondent 13? Please. It should be a couple more. Yes, there. Thank you, Hillary. Mr. Johnson, does this report look familiar to you? Hillary, if you scroll down just a little bit, it
Is Mr. Johnson, can you hear us? Are you frozen? Oh, you're okay.
No, I can see the screen.
Okay.
And then Hillary, if you scroll down just a little bit more to the next page, Mr. Johnson, do you recognize that physician's name?
Yeah, Charles Mess Jr. He's the one that performed the surgery on my hip.
Okay. And are you familiar with this duty status report from your Dr. Mess?
Yes.
Okay. And did you, Hillary, if you just scroll up again to the restriction boxes. So Dr. Mess allowed you to return to, or gave, I guess, clearance is the best way to put it, to return to work full duty with no restrictions, beginning on
September 1st.
2019. That's correct, right?
September 1st.
So that's the first day, or you testified earlier, September 2nd was the first day that you returned back to full duty after
Yes.
injury on February 1st, 2018. And you had no restrictions at all, correct?
Yeah, that's what he put on there.
Okay. And how long did you work full duty for?
I worked full duty until the 25th when I injured my back lifting the stuff off the truck.
Okay. And can you go over again what you were doing on September 25th?
Okay, on the 25th, we were working over on let me see, it was in Primrose Acres. I forgot the name of the street.
Okay.
But we were working on that street. We were doing a patch on that street. And we had taken take the stuff off the truck and sit it on the side. And we had to move it after we did what we did in the hole and put the tack down on. We had to move the stuff so the dump truck with the asphalt could back up and dump the first level of asphalt for us to tamp down. So I had to pull the utility truck up, and we had to lift the tamper in the hole and tamp the stuff down, lift it back out of the hole. And while I was lifting the tamper and lifting that tailgate between one or two, I don't know which one, but I injured my back. And I told Mark Parker, he was my immediate supervisor. He was a crew leader on the job. I told him that I had hurt my back. I was bent over. He said, "Man, what's wrong with you? You don't look good." I said, man, I'm hurting. I hurt my back. He said, "You want me to take you back to the shop, or you want to sit in the truck for a little while?" And I told him I would sit in the truck for a little while.
Okay. You filled out a first report of injury, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Hillary, I believe that's respondent 15. Okay, and Hillary kindly redacted some of the sensitive information, so I very much appreciate that. Is this the first report of injury that you filled out?
Yes.
Do you see what the date of the report is?
Date of report is November the 15th.
Okay, so why did it take almost 2 months to fill out this report?
In my objection, Mr. Chairman, I feel like this is totally irrelevant, more like a workers' comp hearing than has any relevance to the bearing of the termination.
I'm going to allow it. Go ahead, Ms. Berger.
Do you remember the question, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, at first when I went to see, I went to get an appointment with my primary care doctor. He had no openings until the 23rd of October. So I made an appointment with Dr. Mess, and I told him that I had pain running down my legs, down the back of my right buttock and my back. And he is the one that did the surgery on my hip. But he placed me back on light duty status. And from that point on, when I went back, I wasn't on the asphalt crew anymore. He took me off the asphalt crew. The asphalt was messing with my asthma. Plus, I had hurt my self-hurt working on the asphalt crew. And
Okay.
then when I went to see my doctor, when an appointment was available, he sent me for an MRI, and the MRI showed that my lumbar spine was messed up.
Okay, do you recall when you saw Dr. Mess after this incident?
I saw Dr. Mess on the 26th.
Okay, so the question, I guess, still remains, if you saw Dr. Mess on September 26th, why did you wait till November 15th to fill out this report of injury?
I don't know what happened with that report, but let me see. I know at first they when I called workman's comp, they wouldn't give me a number. They wouldn't give me a claim number. And that held me up. Then the guy Corey Bradley down there that works downtown, he had to call and get the lady Ashley Fishbein to give me a claim number. And that's why it took so long to put this stuff in, put this right here in. But they knew about it from the beginning, from the very day.
Okay, so directing your attention to number 4, that asks what you were doing and how did this incident happen. If you could just sort of review that really quickly, and let me know when you're done reading that.
What were you doing and how did this incident happen?
Yes.
Lifting plate tamper and 5-gallon buckets of water off the truck.
And is that a accurate representation of what caused the injury?
Yeah, it was lifting all that. I can't tell you exactly when the injury definitely occurred. I was lifting those things when I had the pain in my back.
Okay, and then number 5, this sort of ties in with your earlier testimony about some of the duties that are required of an equipment operator, one specific to the asphalt crew. And
yes.
Is that
yeah, plate tamper, cutter, utility truck tailgate, 5-gallon buckets of water. It was all the stuff that you had to lift. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell when the exact thing that pushed it over the edge happened. I know it was those things I was lifting when I hurt my back.
Okay, and you just mentioned that you went and saw Dr. Mess. So Hillary, if you could go to respondent 14, please. I'd like to show you.
Yeah.
Does this look familiar to you, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I think that says 13, didn't it?
It's 14. I believe it's 14. It's down. They're down at the bottom of the page.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. And so Dr. Mess gave you a restriction on pushing and pulling and lifting and carrying at a maximum of 10 pounds, correct?
Yes.
Is that still your current restriction?
Yes.
And then you could scroll down. Well, I'm sorry. There's no climbing, no bending or kneeling, no running.
Yeah.
And are there still restrictions that you have to plan on? Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know if you can read his handwriting,
but I can read it for you.
Okay.
I recommend that the patient Howard Johnson Jr. not work with asphalt as this is exacerbating his asthma, and I recommend that he undergo a medical retirement.
Okay, and so, did you apply for medical retirement at this point on the basis of your physician's recommendations?
No.
Why not?
Because I was waiting to see what was going to happen with this workman's comp claim.
Okay. So you didn't want to get the process started at all?
No, I wanted to wait.
Did you feel that medical retirement was necessary at that point?
Did I feel that it was?
Correct.
I can't say for sure that I felt that it was. I'm not a doctor.
Okay. Hillary, if you could go to respondent 16, please. Mr. Johnson, you testified that you did get to see your, I believe you said he was your primary care physician, Dr. Dabbs.
Yes.
Okay. Does this document look familiar to you?
Yes.
And did Dr. Dabbs also place the same restrictions as Dr. Mess did back in September? I believe the date of this was
yes,
December.
He said return to work on modified duty with these restrictions.
Okay. And so he also said 10-pound limits on pushing and pulling and lifting and carrying.
Yes.
No climbing, bending, kneeling, and no running. Hillary, if you could scroll down to the recommendation box, can you read what Dr. Dabbs' recommendations were?
I recommend that the patient, Mr. Johnson, not work with asphalt as this is exacerbating his asthma. I recommend that he undergo medical retirement.
Okay. So did you apply for medical retirement at that point?
No, I didn't,
And how come?
because I wanted to wait.
Have you applied for medical retirement?
And I still was able to work, only with those modified restrictions.
Okay. Have you applied for medical retirement since we're at over a year at this point since these recommendations? Have you since applied for medical retirement
No,
for the same reasons as before?
no, not for the same reasons as before. I have to go in and talk to Lori Gardner and put in paperwork for medical retirement. But I'm trying to figure out why nobody talk. I've been vested for 6 years. Why nobody talked to me about a pension? Why nobody talked to me about any kind of a disability retirement, anything? I'm still trying to figure out why nobody's talked to me about anything. All they said is that they're terminating me like I did something wrong.
Did you inquire about medical retirement with the Human Resources?
At one time, I talked to Lori Gardner, yes.
Okay, and that didn't answer the questions that you apparently have now?
Well, because she's saying that they don't have me as having an accidental or special injury, like I didn't fall on the job. The paperwork that was put in, everybody in my crew was there. They know I fell and hurt myself on the job. And even in the workman's comp hearing, the lady said, I'm not disputing the fact that you fell and hurt yourself, but I believe that the fall is not the reason why you have to have surgery, so we're not going to pay for it.
Who was they that you were just describing?
The lady that I'm talking about, her name is Michelle Matimmit, and she's I think she's the attorney for the city workman's comp.
I apologize. I should have been more clear. When you were meeting with Lori Gardner and you referenced a they.
When I was meeting with Lori Gardner, when I referenced a they, I meant the city because they don't have it down that I fell and hurt myself. So she said that you can only get a lower rate retirement amount a month because they don't have you listed as having fell on the job. She said if they had you listed as an accidental or specialty injury, you would get like $2,600 a month. Whereas because they don't, you would get like $600 and some a month if you put in for medical retirement, because they don't have it. I don't know why they don't have it as I fell on the job.
Okay, you testified earlier, and I apologize, I jumping around just a little bit, but you testified earlier that the last day that you worked for the city was March 5th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
Are you still getting paid by the city?
Yes, because
So
my
you're
appeal process is still going on.
So you're still an employee of the city?
Yes.
You have not been separated from service or terminated or any of those words, correct?
Well, they said that I would have been terminated, but I guess because of the appeal process, that is stopping.
And you've been getting paid since March 5th, 2020 at your normal rate as an equipment operator one?
Yes, I have, but I could have been doing some light duty, something that was productive instead of just sitting home and doing that.
Okay. Indulgence for just 1 second. So, is it correct that since February 1st, 2018, so almost coming up upon three years, that you have not worked in a full duty capacity other than the September 2nd through September 25th, 2019? So about
You say since September 1st, 2018?
2019 through September 25th. So let me ask again. So is it correct that since February 1st, 2018, you have not worked in a full duty capacity with the exception of that September 1st, September 2nd through September 25th, where you were working on the asphalt crew.
Yes, that's true. But I was I was doing various jobs on light duty in different departments in the city.
Right, so, but I'm saying just specifically full duty. That's the only time you worked full duty in almost 3 years.
Yes.
And have you been receiving the same rate of pay, or have you been receiving the pay of an equipment operator one throughout that entire time period?
Yes, I have.
And all other times that you came into work, so physically came into work during that time period, you were in a light duty capacity, correct?
Yes.
Light or modified duty.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned something about the grass cutting crew.
Yes, that was the crew that I was trying to go into. Matt and Marsha Patrick told me that I could go right into that crew because the guy that was retiring, his retirement would have been up at the same time that I was going on full duty, so that I could go on that crew. But the guy Kevin Mako came from HVAC, and he didn't want to go on asphalt, so they put him on the grass cutting crew, and they put me on the asphalt crew.
But you didn't have any sort of restrictions at the time preventing you from being on the asphalt crew, correct?
No, they said I could go back to full duty. But I was told by Marsha Patrick that I'd be able to go right into there. Bob Coconel said that you're operator one, you can't pick where you want to go, but they allowed this guy, Kevin Mako, that came in to pick to go on grass because he didn't want to go on asphalt.
Yep.
I was coming off major surgery, and the grass cutting crew would have been just what I needed to fit all my criteria without having to do all that lifting.
Now, based on do you need to see the duty status report that your counsel showed you earlier from July 22nd?
What are you asking me about it?
I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your current restrictions.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Okay. Hillary, I think it's our respondent 21. And so this was the duty status report that you presented to the city from Dr. Dabbs, correct?
Is that one from Dr. Dabbs?
Yes, I believe so. If you scroll down, Hillary, to the next page, it'll have his signature.
Okay, yeah, that is Dr. Dabbs, yes.
Okay. So scrolling back up to the area where the restrictions are. So Dr. Dabbs has placed the restrictions of 10-pound limit for lifting and carrying and pushing and pulling, and no bending, no climbing, and no running. So based on these restrictions, and is this the most current medical documentation that you've provided to the city? The most recent, I mean?
What date is that presented? Because I haven't presented any since I've been, yeah, I think that might be the most current.
Okay. So based on these restrictions here, do you feel that you're able to do some of the functions that you described earlier? So I'll kind of take it one by one. Do you feel that you can operate the plate tamper or the hand tamper, I think is what you called it?
Operated by just holding it in the hole while it's vibrating, I could do that, but lifting it is a completely different story.
So you couldn't lift it. Could you lift the cutter?
Well, it's always two people that lift the cutter. One will lift up the front, the other one lifts up the back, the handle. It's an awkward machine to try to lift by yourself.
So what about the concrete bags? You said that you believe that they were about 50 pounds. Do you think you could lift that?
With help from somebody else, probably.
Okay, what about the trash cans downtown?
No,
What about the tailgate, lifting the tailgate?
with help.
With help? Okay, what about the 5-gallon buckets? I think you referenced several of them.
No, I can't.
Okay. Was there anything else? What about you mentioned that there's some of the machinery that you guys use that you have to climb up into. Do you think that based on your restrictions, you could do that?
Yeah, that's basically just climbing up steps on the side of a truck or on the side of a front end loader. Just
Okay.
it's just like two or three steps.
Okay. Let me make sure I didn't miss. That's all the questions that I have.
Mr. Johnson.
Hillary, just a moment, Mr. Foley. Hillary, if you could just take us out of the, there we go, share screen. Mr. Foley, go ahead with your redirect.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Johnson, just a few questions. You're just asked about a bunch of duties about the concrete bags, the trash bags downtown, the tailgate. I just want to make sure I'm clear. These are the job duties of the asphalt crew. Is that right?
The concrete bags are mostly the utilities crew, and over in the streets, the detail to go down and lift up those trash cans or something. That's the streets department. The asphalt crew is lifting tailgate and diesel fuel and 5-gallon things of tamp and lifting the plate tamper and all that stuff, the tailgate and all that stuff. That's the asphalt crew.
So I think that, but I'm still a little confused. When you said utilities, I want to just know, you have the operator 1 position and then the asphalt crew. Is that one and the same or is it different?
Was it still utilities? Yeah, I started on as an operator 1 when I did a lateral transfer from parking enforcement into utilities.
Okay, into utilities. So of the job duties that you were just asked in terms of the concrete bags, the trash bags downtown, the tailgates, some of the other job duties, which of those would you have to do as part of the equipment operator 1 position?
Well, I'm an equipment operator 1, so all of them I did while equipment operator 1. I didn't have to lift the trash cans downtown.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times they take the forklift downtown. As a matter of fact, I drove the forklift downtown, and we had to take those benches up when they were getting ready to have something down in Susan Campbell Park. But I didn't have to lift in any of that.
Okay. And so just to be clear, many of the job duties of the asphalt crew falls under the equipment operator 1 position. Is that right?
Yeah.
You were asked earlier about the 100-pound requirement, and you agreed that it's. You said it's. I think you said it's on there. I just want to make sure you understand. My question is, this 100-pound requirement, is this based on your understanding of the position, or is this based off of the documentation of the job description?
The documentation says you have to be able to lift 100 pounds, but like I said, nobody in the city has to lift 100 pounds by themselves. It's always 2 or 3 people that do lifting. I mean, to try to keep people from hurting themselves, they don't do that.
And you mentioned the having to climb some steps, I believe, to go into trucks. Just to be clear, you think you said 2 to 3 steps to get into the truck? Was that the only stepping or climbing you would have to do in that position?
Yes.
And just to be clear, the job duties that you were asked about in terms of the concrete bags, the trash bags, the tailgate, would you have to do any of those duties in the grass cutting position?
No.
Or what about with Dan Horwath as the fleet maintenance?
No.
Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
Ms. Berger?
I have nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Foley, should I call your next witness?
Yeah, so trying to call Mr. Horwath. I'm not sure how we can arrange to get him on the phone.
Do we have his phone number? Ms. Berger, do you have his telephone number?
I don't have his telephone number, but I have the telephone number of people that do, so I can, if you give me just a second. I will.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
No. I have his cell phone number if you need.
I'm texting his cell phone now.
Thank you, Ms. Raff. Hillary, I can never say your last name. You got to forgive me.
Raftovich.
Raftovich. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Horvath, thank you for joining us. Just want to remind you that you're under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Foley, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Horwath. I apologize if I mispronounced your name slightly, but thank you for being here today. My name is Mike Foley, and I represent Mr. Johnson. Can you please just go ahead and state your name for the record?
What's that?
Please go ahead and state your name for the record.
Daniel Harworth.
And do you work for the city of Annapolis?
That is correct.
What is your current title?
Fleet manager.
How long have you been in that position?
7 years.
So just to be clear, you're in that position, let's say September, October, November of 2019?
Yes.
And around that time, did Mr. Howard Johnson start to work under you?
I don't think he worked in. I thought it was after the first of the year.
Okay, so what's your understanding as to when he worked with you?
Yeah, I believe it was after the first of the year because I had a guy go out on an operation, and I believe he was on light duty, and I needed somebody to level my shelves. So I asked Mr. Kirkenair, and he said that he was available. So that's who I got.
Okay. And just to be clear, I think you said at the beginning of the year, that would be January of 2020.
What's that? I'm sorry, I can't.
I'll try to speak louder. Just to be clear, when you said the beginning of the year, did you mean January of 2020?
Yes.
And so what were Mr. Johnson's duties when he worked under you?
He labeled the part shelves in my parts room so we could get ready for inventory.
Anything else?
No. Hold on a minute. Hey, Bob, I'm on the call. Yeah, I know. Somebody text me. All right. All right. I'm sorry. Somebody was trying to get a hold of me.
Not a problem.
They tell me to get on this. Get on this.
Do you remember approximately how long Mr. Johnson worked for you in the fleet maintenance?
Cheapers, I don't know. It might have been a month and a half, maybe 2 months.
Okay. And in that time period, that month, or maybe 2 months, was Mr. Johnson able to do the job sufficiently, in your opinion?
Yeah, this label and shelves. He had a label maker. He put the label, the location of the shelf, and put the sticker on the shelf.
And during that time period or even after, did you ever give any complaints to Mr. Johnson about his performance under you?
No,
I'm sorry, no?
no.
And then there came a time when Mr. Johnson stopped working under you, and he went to somewhere else. How did you come to learn of that switch?
The guy that was out on the operation came back to work, and then he started doing that job that
What
he
was
was
his
supposed to
name?
be doing.
I'm sorry, what was his name?
Jeremy Tucker.
Do you remember when it was that he came back from his surgery?
Not really. It could have been mid-February.
Just to be clear, 2020.
Yes, sir.
And was there any lapse? I'm just trying to understand the time frame between when Mr. Johnson stopped working for you and when this Mr. Tucker returned. Was there any days where you had no one, or did he step in as soon as Mr. Johnson left?
Well, there's days that he took off. He took off on some days. I don't know what days he were, but there were some days he weren't there at all. It was just labeled on the parts room shelves. It wasn't a necessary job. It was just something to help us get better organized when we do inventory.
Okay. I guess my question is, when were you informed, if you remember, about Mr. Johnson not working under you anymore?
I guess when Mr. Tucker came back, sometime in there, it might have been a week lapse, because I anticipate, I told Mr. Kokenair that Jeremy Tucker was coming back and gave him the date, and I guess he might have pulled him then. Say that he had to go over to, I believe, the trailer, because he was just here labeling the shelves that I was going to have Mr. Tucker do, but he was out on leave.
So who made the decision that Mr. Johnson would no longer work under you? Was that your decision or someone else's decision?
No, that would be probably Mr. Kokenair's decision.
And
that's who he worked for.
And did you have any conversations with Mr. Kokenair about the transition from Mr. Johnson back to Mr. Tucker?
Only that he knew that Mr. Tucker was coming back. That he was coming back a certain date, that I wouldn't need two people doing the same thing.
And this conversation with Mr. Kokenair, was this in person or over the phone or through other means?
It was a casual conversation I was having with him. We usually meet in the morning because we're in the same building. And then there was a casual conversation saying that when Mr. Tucker was coming back and all.
Did you ever tell Mr. Johnson, who's here today, that there was still more work to be done under you in the fleet maintenance?
What's that again? I'm sorry. It's kind of hard to.
I'm sorry. Did you ever tell Mr. Johnson, who's here today, that there was still more work to be done under you in the fleet maintenance?
No.
And is Mr. Jeremy Tucker still in that position today? Did you hear me?
Yeah, somebody walked in my office. I wouldn't say nothing. Just let Mr. Tucker retired in June.
And when Mr. Tucker retired in June, did you ever have any conversations with anyone at the city about trying to get Mr. Johnson back doing the job with you?
Mr. Johnson cannot do the job that Mr. Tucker does. Mr. Tucker was a mechanic. I was just having him label the shelf, which is a light duty job. A Tech 2 is working on heavy equipment and all. So Mr. Johnson could not perform many of them duties.
Okay, and so the labeling that you described that Mr. Johnson did, was that just one part of a greater job duty that Mr. Tucker did, or was the labeling not even a job duty that Mr. Tucker was responsible for?
That was a job duty Mr. Tucker was not responsible for labeling the shelves. It was just something that we were trying to get organized
I see.
here at the shop.
And is there work now that Mr. Johnson can do in the shop?
Unless he wants to work on a dump truck, put snow plows on, that's what we're working on now.
Mhm. Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
Ms. Berger.
I just have one question. Mr. Horwath, you mentioned something just now about the dump truck and putting on snow plows. Is that something that would be a full-time job?
Yes, and we get ready for snow. The snow plows are 12-foot plows, 8-foot plows. We're getting ready for the snow coming in Wednesday. So we're checking all the equipment, making sure everything works. The job duties here in the garage are mainly mechanical, and you have to have a skill set for that.
Okay, so I guess I should have worded it better. It's a full-time job now, but it wouldn't be a full-time job the rest of the year.
Well, putting the snow plows on is what we're doing now, but then you're doing oil changes, putting brakes on vehicles, changing tires, transmissions. You're doing preventive maintenance on vehicles. That is, it takes a certain skill set.
Okay, and does it take certain physical requirements as well?
Yes, tires, brakes, drums, brake rotors, taking, working on lift gates and all that.
Okay, so would that require mechanics to bend?
Bend, pulling, tugging, lifting, climbing, all that. Is it lifting more than, geez, I don't know. A lot of this stuff is 25 to 50 pounds, like a brake drum. Some brake drums are over 100 pounds on the big dump trucks and all.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Horvath, just one last question. Is there any other work? I know you mentioned the snow plowing and the preventive maintenance work, but is there any other work that you need to be done that is not in that position that you need around the fleet maintenance?
Not now, no. It was just something that I knew Bob had somebody on light duty, and I was trying to get the parts room organized. And I was going to pull one of my mechanics to do it. Bob said he had somebody available, and I used that person.
Okay. Let me get your contact information. I'll give you a call back. I'm actually on it.
Hillary, can you mute yourself real quick?
Sorry.
They asked me about the fire.
There we go. Mr. Johnson, could you please mute yourself?
Mr. Horwath, one last question is, do you anticipate a time in the future where you might need more organization, such as the work Mr. Johnson did?
At a point in time, probably when we move to our new garage in 2 to 3 years.
All right, nothing.
Ms. Berger, for the record, what was the nature of your objection?
I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
Nothing further.
Ms. Berger, anything?
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Horwath. I don't believe we'll need any, if for some reason we need to call you back later on in the afternoon, we will get in touch with you with your cell number.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, you prepared to call your next witness?
Yes, if we can arrange to have Mr. Elvis Makel. I don't have his contact number, but
Let me see what I can do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got everybody ready to.
Hillary's beat me to it.
Mr. Foley, who's your next witness after Mr. Makel?
Then just Ms. Granger, and that will be it.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Foley, I think you indicated after Mr. Makel, we're going to have Ms. Granger on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that your last witness you're anticipating at this point?
Yes, Chairman.
And is that Corey Granger? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's Tisha Granger, not Corey Granger.
Yeah.
So actually, while we're at, let's clarify on the witness list. It says Trisha Lindsay Granger is testifying. Is this another Granger that's testifying?
So,
Mr. Foley?
No, yes, no, it is Trisha Lindsay Granger, not some other.
I don't have a cell phone for that person.
hey, Tish.
Mr. Makel, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to remind you we're under oath, and Mr. Foley is going to start asking you some questions, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Foley.
Thank you. Mr. Makel, my name's again Mike Foley. I represent Mr. Johnson. Can you please just state your name for the record?
Elvis Makel.
Do you work for the city of Annapolis?
Yes.
What's your current title?
Dispatcher, Public Works Operation.
I'm sorry, the first word was dispatch?
Yes.
How long have you been in that position?
About 15 years.
And so you would have been in that position in the end of 2019, October, November, December 2019?
Yes.
Is that inside the Public Works office?
Say again?
Is that your position? Is that inside the Public Works office on Gorman Street?
No. 932 Spar Road.
2 Spar Road. Do you work with a Miss Trisha Granger?
Yes, we're in the same office.
Okay. Are your desks near each other?
Cattle corner.
Mr. Makel, did you take any prolonged vacations in November of 2019?
No.
What about December 2019?
I'm going to object. I don't know what prolonged is defined as.
More than 3 days, Mr. Makel?
No,
And what about December of 2019?
no,
What about October?
no,
Just to be clear, what about September of 2019?
no,
Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Johnson where he asked you about whether or not you were taking vacation near the end of 2019?
no, not to my knowledge.
You don't remember having conversations at your testimony?
No,
And just to cover our bases, what about in January of 2020? Did you take any vacation longer than 3 days?
January 2020. No,
And you mentioned you work, she's around the corner, but Mr. Granger works, in the same office. Do you guys do the same work, or does she have a different position?
she has different position.
Are you aware of what her position is?
She's office associate.
And I'm only asking about your knowledge, but are you aware of whether or not she took any vacation more than 3 days?
I'm not aware.
Just to be clear, either.
Mr. Foley.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Foley, I would suggest, especially since you're having Ms. Granger come on, that you ask her that question.
That's fine. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Michael.
Ms. Berger?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Makel. Before you go, can you help us get in touch with Ms. Granger so she can
Yes.
get on the call?
Tish, come on over here.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Makel.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Granger. I just want to remind you that you are still under oath from this morning.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Foley is going to go ahead and ask you some questions, and then the city attorney, Ms. Berger, will. Go ahead, Mr. Foley.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Granger, my name is Mike Foley, and I represent Mr. Howard Johnson. Can you please just state your name for the record?
Letitia Lindsay Granger.
Okay. And you work for the city of Annapolis, correct?
Correct.
What's your title, your current title?
Office associate,
How long have you been in that position?
20 years.
And so you were in this office associate position in the second half of 2019, beginning of 2020, is that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Granger, did you take any prolonged vacations? By that, I mean more than 3 days of any vacations in November of 2019?
2019, last year. 2019. No, not to my knowledge.
And same question, but with regards to December of 2019, do you recall taking any such vacations at that time?
No.
What about October of 2019?
No.
And just to cover our bases, what about January of 2020?
No.
Did you ever have any conversations with Mr. Howard Johnson about where he asked you about you taking vacation time?
I don't know. He may have asked me if I was taking any, but I didn't take any, so I don't know if it was a big conversation about it.
Okay. Do you remember who else might have been present for this conversation? You might have had this conversation.
No, most of the time it's just me, him, and Elvis in the office together.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Most of the time it's just me, him, and Elvis in the office together. So Elvis may have been around, but I don't really know.
Okay. And do you remember the substance of that conversation, what he might have asked you?
If anything, it probably would have been if I'm taking any time off. That would have been it.
Did he ever say why he was asking you that question?
No.
Okay, nothing further.
Okay.
Hold on, Ms. Granger, hold on 1 second.
I don't have any. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
He's on mute.
Thank you, Ms. Granger. If we need you again, we will get back in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Foley, you said no further witnesses?
Correct, Chairman.
I would suggest we take a recess for a lunch break. Let me propose, and council, if you could weigh in, perhaps we could resume at 12:30. Do we need a little more time?
12:30 is fine with me.
Yes, that works for me as well.
Yeah. 12:30 will work.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, then we will go ahead and we will go into recess until 12:30. Hillary, I believe we should just turn off our microphones and stop the video, but if we could stay on the call, we should just leave our computers on, correct? Or our devices on?
I'm going to end the call and I will restart it with the same login.
Okay. All right, so we'll log back in at 12:30 then. Very good. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead recess until 12:30 and we'll